Eliane, and today I'm going to show you how to add a fussy cut motif into your binding. I love to add this technique in different ways. One way is when I'm using a striped fabric as my binding, because maybe I don't want to join up that final binding join. But a different way that I like to use this is when I run out of binding so close to the end. Oh, isn't that frustrating? But now you can add a fun little motif and pretend that it was intentional. So what I have here is my little motif that I'm going to add into my binding. You want to cut the width of your piece the same width as your binding. So mine is 2.5 inches because that's the width of my binding. On the left-hand side, you want to leave 1/4 inch for your seam allowance. Then you have your little icon that's going to be your motif, and the rest of this is going to get hidden in our binding as we fold it and sew it over. Just make sure your little motif is no wider than 3/8 inch, or else you're going to lose it in your binding. Now, to make sure that we can cover this space accurately, just make sure you first measure how wide of a space you need to cover. I am missing 1 inch of binding. I'm going to add to that an additional inch for the seam allowances. So my entire piece here is going to be 2 inches high. Now that I've got that figured out, we're going to make sure that we're sewing it in properly. So the little motif has to be close to the edge of your quilt. That's going to make sure that when we fold and fold, it's going to show up properly. All right. Open up your piece of binding, and then make sure to have your piece of motif lining up correctly. We're going to lay this down and sew it with 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. This one's a little trickier. You sometimes have to bunch up your quilt a little bit to make sure that you can evenly sew these two pieces together. Okay. Last thing that we have to do is make sure that we press this. Sometimes I like to just finger press because I don't really want to get up. So give that a little press or a finger press so that it's going to lay nice and flat. The best part is the final reveal. So as you fold it back, you can see that cute little motif that's going to show up in the front of your quilt. I'm Eliane, and I'm so glad that you joined me today to learn how to do a fussy cut motif in your binding.